What is the connection between New Jerusalem and Jerusalem? Is it only symbolic and metaphorical, or does it also somehow represent the actual physical location of Jerusalem? Well, the New Jerusalem, so it's kind of like it's the antithesis of Babel, right? Because it's a city that comes down from heaven, as opposed to, a tower that's being erected from earth to heaven. So it's like the inverse of Babel. Oh, you're muted, Hezi. Go ahead.
Yeah, just Nate, just to say just about that line, and you continue saying that it comes down from heaven, the third temple, right? So like, it's never a structure that comes down from heaven. Rather, it comes down from the higher places of consciousness, where we could grab these ideas and bring them down.
And the arrival of the New Jerusalem is connected to the singing of the new song by the same exact 144,000 that Jed and I were talking about. So that suggests to me, if the 144,000 does in fact properly refer to the Jewish people, as I think it does, and it is the Jewish people that are singing the new song, then there rightfully has to be a connection with the actual Jerusalem to the arrival of the New Jerusalem from heaven.
So then the question is the New Jerusalem just the old Jerusalem, just exposed in its final glory?
Well, I'm inclined to say that because I think that that the new heaven and new earth are new in a way that points toward them being transformed, right?
Like the new song.
Right, exactly. So it's new via transformation, not destruction. Like the old heaven and the old earth pass away, not because they're destroyed, but because they're transformed. And actually I think what changes is us. I don't think really from God's point of view, I don't think it's always the creation.
So I think that is the eighth note, which is our recognition of our connection to that music. Because there's only us interpreting music at a certain level right now, and how beautiful we lay on those patterns. However, if we realize how we're part of those patterns fully, there's sort of an eighth note to that. And that's true also about, you could say about, let's say, a New Jerusalem, so to speak, which is there's the Jerusalem we know today, but there's a fully embodied Jerusalem which allows itself to phase shift. Right. So
this is why the Christian scriptures point both toward the arrival of the New Jerusalem, but Jesus also says the kingdom of God is within you.
Which relates to the tabernacle, what God says, "V'asuli migdash," and they made me a temple, "V'shachanti betocham," and I dwelled within them. It should have been I dwelled within it, singular. However, it dwelled within them because ultimately, again, this relates to the 613 and all the pieces. And why? If we talk about the Bible, each word and each letter is so specific. Hundreds of verses on all, the architecture and the bill of quantities, so to speak, of this tabernacle is because of to connect it to all the different the ideas of the complexities of neurons and cells and body parts and bones of the human body, which is supposed to be, that is where God is ultimately going to be dwelling. And at that point of history, the Israelites needed to understand that in a very structural, physical manifestation of that.
Right. And all we're saying as Christians is that this has happened in one instance already and is being made to be the shape of the entire cosmos in accordance with that.
This resonates with me with the concept of Tzimtzum and the retracting of God, right? Which he allows in. There's a retracting which allows for a space where God is not there, and even in that not there-ness, that not there-ness stems from God, but that not there-ness is for allow there to be a space where something else could exist. And then there's God shines in the divine light, but even the divine light itself is too powerful, so there's the shattering of the vessels. And our job is to identify across the world where the divine light is and raise up these sparks and sort of that we could rebuild this vessel. So this is true. And ironically, this came up this came up where I don't know if you heard the conversation with Eric Weinstein and Joe Rogan that was making the rounds.
I haven't seen it yet. I've got it bookmarked. But...
So towards the end, Eric talks about his hanging out with Kanye and his talking to Kanye about this, and Kanye talking about Hitler being a good dude, right, is coming from a place of raising those sparks, right? Like my job is to see like the best and good in everyone. I'm even going to try to do that with Hitler. Now, granted, that did not work out well for him on a PR level, but as a Jew, there is something beautiful even in that attempt when I see where it's coming from. So I'm not getting into like what he actually ended up saying, but there's something about that which is like our job is to try to identify those things and see those things, and that's why like even in evil, right? That it's evil. You know, God retracting himself allows for us to have free will, which also allows, or let's say the perception of free will, but that allows for evil to exist as well. Now that evil again stems from the good, and in that evil, there's a saying which is you have to find the good in every person, even someone that's pure evil, because maybe there's a drop that's not evil, and if you could identify it, then he could identify it in himself, and then he could actually reach that level that you identified, and then sort of start making his way sort of back up. But it's our job to like sort of locate those things. And I think in a conversation of postmodernism, that potentially starts becoming a little easier to start doing once you could remove the veil of these like hard these sort of terms, which again could even be a response to the Tower of Babel, right? As Zephaniah says, eventually we all have to call a God in one accord. And with Babel, we were the words were specific things, right? Like a brick is a brick, and like the issue was we decided that we know the definitions, we know the definition of God, he's in the sky, and we could attack him. It requires us to have unity with multiplicity, and you could have that in postmodernism when terms could potentially mean more than one thing. I also know how dangerous that is as well. Like, you know, I could see the good even in him was like sort of being like, you know, let's bring us all together. If I could see the good in Hitler, then like, of course, between like the Republican and the Democrat, like we got to find common ground. So again, that is to sort of feel what he's going through, and the attitude is not to tell him it's going to be okay, you know, God works in mysterious ways, like really this is for your benefit. Like while that's all true, he can't hear that. So even, you know, Kanye attempting to, you know, to have this sort of speech is falling on like, you know, on deaf ears. And this is very sad because I think at this point of political discourse in the States, and in a certain extent, this is also true in Israel right now, I don't know if people are hearing each other anymore.
I really love these ideas that you're talking about, especially when we get into the Ein Sof, right?
The entire cosmos in accordance with that.
Right. I guess the rub is just that, like, you know, we don't see that. we don't. I think because we don't see that manifesting in an individual. Right. But I mean, I also, in a certain extent, like, I don't know how much closer we could get about a topic like this.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I don't know, and I don't know that the distance matters much.